And a good midday to you this Tuesday early afternoon. Roger Hill of Wuthering Heights. This VELCO Weather Hazards Outlook is also driven by 802cars.com. It represents 802 Toyota, Twin Cities Subaru, and 802 Honda, all located off of Exit 7 on Interstate 89. Looking at the big picture right now. And the flow, as I've talked about in the past, is kind of coming off the north slope of Alaska, kind of sliding in across portions of Alaska and the Yukon, eventually into southern Canada, the Great Lakes, and then it arrives in the northeast U.S. And we just can't get a pattern change here. It does look like there might be something starting to sort of loosen up the pattern just a little bit. That's going to happen as soon as this coming Sunday, where we could see the warmest temperatures of 2020 this year so far. And then we're back into another cool down, unfortunately, and that looks like that's going to last into the second week of May. Beyond that point, there may be some ruminations potentially of a more larger scale weather pattern feature that will begin to change up our colder than normal weather pattern. The colder than normal weather pattern with the northwesterly shortwave troughs kind of moving on into the region from time to time has a tendency to bring us a little bit of wet snow, so that sort of threat continues and lingers. And then also we get gusty winds, some gusty gradient winds. This is an example here with a shortwave trough that's working through parts of the western upper plains, the high plains, and we've had wind gusts over 50 miles an hour, for example. And these shortwave troughs kind of roll on through and occasionally bring us a little bit of gradient wind issues. It looks like the next issue, we could see that on, looks like Thursday, and also lingering into Friday. But at this point in time, these would be southeasterly winds, and it does look like they're not very strong. They're very, very marginal and barely reaching threshold. So that's the good news there, at least how it looks at this time for this outlook. Okay, the European model in its 6 hourly increments. Right now, this is valid this evening, late today actually at about 5 o'clock. And that is into this evening. We have this area of higher pressure that's up in Quebec, Labrador, and continuing to sort of ridge southward in between two different weather systems. That's all good there. So here comes our next weather maker. That high pressure system strengthens a little bit, kind of heads down into the southern Canadian Maritimes, around Nova Scotia, Gaspé Peninsula, so forth. And we'll start to see a bit of a south wind and also the incoming precipitation that's going to be working through. This is valid at about 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. So we're talking basically overnight Wednesday night, some light sort of sporadic precipitation works on through. We're into a little bit of a gradient wind. You can see the tighter pressure gradients here between this area of higher pressure and this area of low pressure. That's not that strong, fairly weak. There's a ripple along that frontal boundary that's going to be working on through. And so running that, this is when we get our slightly heavier precipitation, which can fall maybe moderate to heavy for a brief period. It looks like that's going to happen during the morning hours on Friday, and then that begins to push off to the east. And the good news is that once that pushes off to the east, we're going to have to change this up here. Let's see. There we go. And it'll continue to track off to the east and open the door for basically Saturday afternoon for some improving conditions and some weak ridging out of the Ohio River Valley. And that should afford us a pretty nice day on Sunday before this little bit and piece here begins to push into the region. And then thereafter, that's about as far as we're going to take it. It does look like some of this colder air behind this shortwave trough will be pushing into the region and lowering the temperatures. Unfortunately, probably about the 5th, 6th of May, we're going to see some colder air work into the region again. And it doesn't look as bad as what we've seen so far this April, but still well below normal temperatures, I'm afraid to say, as we head beyond this period for the early to mid part of next week. GFS and Canadian ensemble data. Well, you can see the 3 hourly QPF, the kind of the highlights, a little bit of precipitation that's exited out of the region already. We're into this sort of drier weather now. This is going to last into, of course, early Wednesday evening before we start to see a little bit more precipitation work in. And a very unsettled weather pattern, as you can see. The rest, of course, depicted by this particular modeling. And it is a situation where we're not looking at anything major in terms of precipitation. So the total amounts of QPF, basically it takes quite a few days to get up to about 1 inch amounts. and nothing I would call spectacular here. Who's in the zone? Well, that would be all of the northeast United States, and this, of course, originates in Gulf of Mexico. Moisture comes in through the Mississippi Valley, the southern Mississippi Valley and southeast plains, and basically takes that right-hand turn. So quite wet pattern here, and of course this is targeting on what we're looking at here once it moves into Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday morning especially, and then lingering into all the way into Saturday morning. So unfortunately, we're looking at somewhere around a ½ inch to about an inch of total precip, and this looks reasonable. And the good news is that, of course, it's going to be falling in the form of rain. Note that way around the corner after Sunday, we could be seeing back a little bit of wet snowflake action as temperatures cool, but that's going to be after temperatures peak out in the 60s, so that's good news there. Looking at the 850 hectopascal temperatures, anything above about the 0 degrees centigrade is raindrops, liquid precipitation, and of course below that, cold enough to snow, and that's when we see that little bit of snow. But overall, let's take a look at the 2-meter temperatures. This is where we're going to be seeing a slight warming trend, big diurnal ranges at first, and then we moisten up with that next rainstorm that's on its way that develops Wednesday night into Thursday, and then we start to, we get one really good day on Sunday, and then the temperatures begin to ramp back down, and that's when it gets a little bit dicey. But looking at total amounts of snow just for kicks, we're not done with it, folks. This is 1-inch amount, so it's that kind of sugar type snow. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be realized as another shot of colder air is going to be working in. Take a look at some of the temperature profiles and you'll see what I'm talking about in the longer range. Warm up in the interior west, a little bit of a cool down Pacific Northwest, and of course we remain fairly cool. And these are maximum 3-day weighted temperatures, 5-day high temperatures, the meteorological output statistics. 3 days later, it looks like this. We're still in the chill, unfortunately. And you can see here, this Canada is a little bit cool, and this is kind of the flow I've been talking about right into the East Coast. And it just hasn't broken yet. And a good part of that is this big blocking area where you see the anomalous warmth. Well, that's underneath a very strong area of higher pressure, also located over Siberia as well. And it just diverts the jet stream. And the jet stream buckles into a trough. And there you go. It's called a negative AO, negative NAO. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights. Thanks for watching.